All right, good evening, everyone. How are we doing tonight? Woo. Excellent. Nice, big, large crowd. Make me feel good. I don't blame everyone for not being able to come. Obviously, we kind of threw a bit of a loop on everyone. Like, hey, yesterday we're changing our location at like noon yesterday. So we apologize for everyone. Hopefully, everyone's streaming so they can still catch the video. All right, let's get our slide deck rolling here tonight. Come on. Shows you that I don't ever use. There we go. All right. It's been a while since I've actually had to do the intros. Jeez, this is terrible. Important things to. We got the auto. I hate when that happens. All right, I'll do fast. We got a Discord. Check it out. Please join. Yay. Find us on Meetup, please, of course, as well. This is the best way to know where we're actually going to be. In the future, we'll try to be better about notifying changes faster than, 24 hours before. Different, but, we can never promise. Hold on here. Yep. Jesus, this is annoying. This is going to be fun. All right, our organizing team. It's me, it's Matt, it's Sam. Hit us up. We've got a YouTube channel. We got over 332.9 subscribers. I'm sure we got actually more than that.
333.
So, Discord again, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We post there occasionally when we remember. Please follow us. We have a LinkedIn group as well. We don't really post much there, but hey, check it out. And tonight, obviously, we got improving, sponsoring with food and location, JetBrains. We got some kind of license to give away. The .NET Foundation, they cover our meetup expenses. Events, Momentum, October 16th.
Our call for speakers is open this month.
Any other details we need to? Nope, just a point. All right. So call for speakers, submit now, go do a talk.
Where is this? I haven't heard of it.
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
One-day conference, October 16th. It's a Thursday.
Is it .NET centric or what?
There's usually a lot of .NET presence, but it's not all .NET.
Yeah. All right. So we got a few spots open later on in this year, so we're still looking for talks. We got my talk tonight. I'm on the MediatR migration. Hopefully Marcel will be available to do his API talk next month. And we got lightning talks. So those are coming up. We'll harass people about that here in just a minute. So obviously, August, September, October, help us fill them, please. We can skip the who's hiring. There's not a few people in here, but if you're hiring, raise your hand. There's some people to hire. Talk to them. And that's the end of the slide deck. I will speak of lightning talks. Lightning talks we always do in July. It's a very good chance to try. Come on. The beginning. There it goes. To try out a talk if you've never given a talk, or even if you've given talks and you just want to test out one. It's a good place for doing that. We're open to any topic, basically, as long as you can convince us that someone that's a .NET developer would find a value out of it. So that's a pretty wide open option for giving your talks. So we usually have 6 available openings. I encourage everyone to come up with something and submit it so that it doesn't have to just be Matt and Sam and me doing half the talks like we do every year apparently now.
How long? 5 to 6 seconds.
See, probably 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
That's somewhere between 5 and 15.
But yeah, there's no, if you stand up here for 1 minute, I'm going to say that's a little short for a lightning talk, but even though lightning's supposed to be fast, we'll say 5 to 15 minutes. If that's plenty to be able to cover everything. So that's kind of where we're. So again, that's July. So you got like 2 months, give or take, here to figure that out and submit us some talks. So any audio problems in the live stream, folks? Let me know. Looks good on my end, at least. So, all right. Welcome, everyone, to my presentation. I'm calling it the MediatR migration, just because I wanted to use funny words, but really the talk is about navigating library licensing changes. This is something that seems to be coming up more often, I've noticed, in the .NET community specifically, but in other communities as well. This has been just as big of an issue to kind of come up. So I wanted to put together a talk to give people a chance to kind of work through some of these processes and have the bigger discussion to kind of understand what it means and help you work through those without everyone, panicking and lighting your hair on fire. So let's get going here. Obviously, hi, my name's Alan Barber. I'm a principal consultant at Approving here. .NET Foundation member, software developer, computer scientist, Scrum Master, small-time crypto investor, Crohn's disease fighter, husband and father. So I do a whole bunch of things. And anyone care to know who that little fellow is? There we go. It's the disapproving gorilla from Code Mesh at the Kalahari. I love that guy. Got to take a picture of him. All right. So I'm going to use my usual disclaimer that I do in every talk just because I like to cover that. I am no expert. I'm still learning. I make no guarantees. That's my coverage. Just basically say, look, the best of my knowledge of what I'm going to say, I believe to be true and authentic and correct, but this is not gospel. I am in no way, shape, or form, presenting this as legally binding, contractual in any way, shape, or form. So don't come after me if anything I say causes trouble for you, all right? That's all I'm saying, okay? Please? All right, so what are we here to talk about tonight? Basically, it's the rug pull. So when libraries change the rules and they change the licensing on you and how that affects your lives. First they give it to you for free. You're like, great, this is awesome. This library is helping me out so much. I would have spent weeks having to do this by hand, but I do this library. Bada bing, bada boom. Excellent. Hey, boss, I got that feature done. It's great. And then when you're hooked, they demand you start paying all of a sudden. Hey, buddy, glad you like that. It'd be a shame if you had to start paying me. Ah, man, that's not fair. And it's not. And this has been one of those big debates, specifically with MediatR, I've noticed, watching sort of the ongoing discussions of, it's unethical. You give it to free, and now you're going to tell people they have to pay for it. That's not, I don't know. That's some people, get upped on it. I can see the reasons why. So, is it really unfair? That's what we're kind of here to figure out, and also to kind of work through those so we can take care of it. So speaking of .NET licensing changes, there's actually been a lot in the last couple of years. So I'll quickly run down all these. I think most of these are well known, but some of these are a little less. So Mock was actually probably one of the first ones. Now, I guess technically it wasn't a license change. Mock was the big thing with Mock, if anyone remembers Mock, was that they decided to slip in some hidden code so that when you would run the build, it would throw out a warning and say, hey, it doesn't look like you're on our donor list. Would you care to share a couple of bucks to help fund this operation?
It would also share your emails.
Well, then as I say, it searched a couple of places to look for email addresses, hashed it, and sent it up to the cloud so that it could compare if you were a donor or not. And if you weren't, then it would throw this nice little warning message. Two major issues with that. One, what the heck are you doing taking data off of my system and sending it up to some third-party system? I mean, that's a total breach of everything, peed off a lot of people. Yeah. The other issue was, and this is what would cause, I think, the initial concern which people caught was, if you're not aware in .NET, you can, in the build, you can say, treat warnings as errors. A lot of people do that. And so they would pull the latest version of the library down, and all of a sudden a warning pops up. Everyone's automatic builds or their nightly builds all start blowing up and crashing with this nice little, would you please give me $5 to help me keep funding this thing? Holy crap, like that's that's sort of a bad thing to be doing there. So again, it wasn't really a license change, but this was like the first of what started sort of this bigger issue of people, gets back to the understanding. People want to make money for the stuff they work on, which we can get into the whole debates of that situation. But how do you do it in an ethical and polite and correct way that doesn't screw your end users? Fluid assertions is another one that just happened recently. The developer of that one decided that he was actually going to partner with Exceed, which is a big .NET component library company. And so now it went from free to $150 per developer seat. Well, think about that. That's a bit pricey.
Yeah, especially if you're not planning on it.
Especially if you're not planning on it, to come to your boss one day and say, hey, so all of our unit tests, we've been using this library to write our unit tests. Well, there's 100 developers. We now have to buy 100 licenses to cover writing unit tests. Your boss is going to be like, throw all the unit tests out. You just know that's going to be the answer. Identity server was another big one. This was years ago. But if you don't know identity server, it's pretty much sort of the name of it. It's for authentication and authorization and role-based controls. It was free, and it was considered the de facto standard way for the longest time, to where if you went into Visual Studio and said start new ASP.NET web project, it included identity server in that template. That was just, that's how you did it, and everyone used identity server. And one day they just announced, you know what? We're going to make this a commercial product now, and the next version will be luckily it's not like it was retroactive or anything, but they said the next version moving forward is going to become a commercial product. It was $500 per user. So if you had a website with 100,000 people that logged in and you used Identity Server to manage those 100,000 logins, they wanted $500 per one of those users. That's $50 million. Yeah, that's a little on the heavy pricey side. So then, that quickly got ripped out, and people have found different ways to move on. But, that's a major rug pull on you for someone to do like that. ImageSharp, another one. Great library for doing image manipulation. They went dual license at least, and so there's still some options for using it free depending on the circumstances about how you're using it. But in general, if you're an enterprise or a corporation and you're using ImageSharp within it, I believe it's a couple of $1,000s a year basically for the license, which isn't bad. At least that, and it's like a flat rate just per. You can use it as many applications or whatever. They just want a little cash flow coming in. Not too shabby. And Barber was one as well. It's a load testing tool basically, free. Went the same way. The last I looked, I believe it was like $199 a month for just per install of usage. So I don't think it was per user or anything like that, if I remember correctly. Mass transit, another big one that kind of came out of left field, and everyone kind of got shocked on that one. If you don't know mass transit, it's a major distributed app framework. It helps you build big applications and connect queues and all kinds of things like that. They're actually still in the process of doing the migration to it. And so they haven't given official numbers, but the unofficial numbers that keep seeming to be floating around, which take this with a grain of salt, is saying depending on the feature sets that you use, they're going to offer sort of a range of feature sets. But you're looking at something like $5,000 to $20,000 per year. So again, that's how many companies have used mass transit as the core backbone of their entire infrastructure and how they built their applications. And now all of a sudden, they have a new $20,000 a year potential charge coming their way. And then finally, AutoMapper and MediatR. If you're not aware of those two tools, they're both very useful tools, and we'll cover MediatR specifically. And so Jimmy Bogard, who's the developer of them, announced that he decided he was going to take them to a commercial, which is a bit shocking considering just a few months ago when Fluent Assertions went, someone specifically asked him about that, and he said, no, I'm never going to take my libraries commercial. And then a few months later, on April 2nd, he posted a blog post And he specifically said, this isn't an April Fool's joke. This is why it's on the 2nd, not the 1st. I've changed my mind, and I've decided after all that I'm going to take these commercial. But again, no details at this point, which we'll cover some of that a little bit, details more. So again, our case study tonight is MediatR going commercial. I've been a huge proponent and a huge fan of MediatR since I learned about it. I've used it on several projects now, which is one of the reasons why I kind of put this together, because it's this information I need to share with some of my clients on what we're going to do, guys, to help them out. So we'll just do a quick, what is MediatR? If you're not aware of MediatR, it's a library, obviously for .NET, that helps implement what's known as the MediatR pattern, which is just a way of decoupling communication between different parts of an application. So instead of an applications talking directly to each other, there's a mediator that handles the connections between them. It's just a way of simplifying, making those connections for requests and responses, and passing queries and notifications between them in a cleaner, more organized way, so that you don't have a lot of that spaghetti code connecting everything. And you'll often see it used in conjunction with the CQRS, or the command query response segregation pattern. Again, I'm not going to go into those. If you want to learn more about that, may I suggest my talk that I did 2 years ago. Little side plug there. It was actually 2 years ago to the day, basically, that I gave the presentation on CQRS and MediatR. So, yeah, we've had a pretty good roll on that one. So check it out if you want to learn more about that, and then we can go from there. All right. So let's stop here for a second. So why is it going commercial? That's sort of the question of the day. So again, on April 2nd, Jimmy basically announced plans that he's going to commercialize at least two of his major. He has a bunch of different projects. The two ones he's focused on is AutoMapper and MediatR, because they're sort of the big popular ones that have a lot. And as he claims, the goal is just to ensure their long-term sustainability. He wrote a nice whole thing about, when he worked at Headspring, they were really supportive of his open source work. And so he was able to spend a lot of time developing these and get basically paid to develop them, which was great. Once he left Headspring a few years ago, he's found it very hard to have the time to really dedicate the resources to maintaining the projects at the level he wants and at the level of expectation that other people have of these projects. So that's his goal, is just to introduce some kind of commercial model so that it gives him the time to dedicate to these projects so that they can be better supported, they can be grown, he can keep up with the feature requests, things like that. He's not looking, at least in his claim, he's not looking to, this is not his retirement plan, so he's not going crazy. But again, specific details are still unknown at this time, so what does that mean? Who knows? But if you want to read more detail, obviously check out his website at Jimmy Bogard, and he has a post. And he's actually done a post since then, which gave some more details, but again, nothing on when it's going to happen and how much the things are going to cost. It's just, I'm working on it. And then, because I think he's afraid there's been so much backlash with other projects, he doesn't want that to happen. So he's trying to find a way to do it the best way he can so that it makes it easy on people. So hopefully it won't be so terrible, but we'll see. All right, so what are our options? Basically, what do I need to tell my boss? Because I'm going to have an awkward conversation here. So option one's the clear, the simple, and this is really the first one that's going to happen. It's just pay and move on. It's the path of least resistance. Pros. No migration work. Hey, what do you know? Just pay for it and keep using it. Continue to support. I mean, and again, this is not just for MediatR. This is in general, any library tool you're using. These are the justifications. You'll get updates, bug fixes, compatibility as .NET framework changes and new features. Hopefully they'll upgrade it so it's faster and better and super better. Hey, let's go ahead and support it. Saves you time and energy. You don't have to avoid the distraction of evaluating and implementing alternatives. That's who has time box the next month and a half to review 10 different new libraries that can be used to replace, or do we re-architecture our entire project from scratch and remove all the functionality that this library has provided. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've got a backlog of a year's worth of work. I don't have time now, except for a month, to figure out how we're going to deal with license changes. Obviously, you have your cons. Now you have recurring costs. Depending on your project, you could have tight budgets. And depending on how much the library charges, like if it's one of those ones that wants to charge you $20,000 a year or $500 per user, and now you have this unnecessary $50 million bill. Well, okay, yeah, we got a problem. You got the vendor lock-in, which is always a case, but that's even in an open source library. You tend to get vendor lock-in unless two libraries implement the exact same functionality in the exact same way. But it's still something you need to think about, that you're financially tied to a third-party product. And this one's a little contentious perhaps, but it also sets a precedent. You're now encouraging potentially more open source projects to go commercial. Everyone that flips the switch and starts demanding money, and then you start paying for it, well, then the next one goes, well, worked for them. Maybe we should do it too. And then next thing you know, it's not one library you're paying for, it's 15 different libraries that all got to pay these monthly, yearly site licenses. Makes development a bit more costly, So, but again, not saying it's a bad thing to ask for it. I'm trying to be neutral here, but it's a thought process that we have to kind of deal with. So let's keep those in mind. Option 2 is stick with the latest free version. Basically, we're just going to freeze the code and hope for the best. Stick our head in the sand, pretend we don't have to worry about it. Hey, what do you know? It's an option, all right? Don't knock it. Specifically for this, we're kind of talking about the concept of, because this is a single library, it's a single NuGet package that we have to reference. It's a little more different if it's a bigger, more complex product, but in this case, one of the things we can do is what's called pinning the version within Visual Studio, and there's actually a way that you can lock down a specific version that you reference so that you won't accidentally upgrade it, which is kind of handy. So the one we're looking at is what's called the exact version match. I will show you a quick demo on how this works, because this is actually kind of cool. Boom. Should the screen changed? Yep. All right. So all you got to do is go into edit your CS proj. This is just sort of a sample little app here. So, is that big enough? Probably not. We'll go zoomer. How's that? Can you see?
Yeah.
All right. So this particular application has two NuGet packages that it's referencing. It's using MediatR and Newtonsoft JSON. Now, I know both of these have newer versions out there. I know MediatR's got a 12.5, and I know Newtonsoft's got it's like 13.02 or something like that. If you look at MediatR, all I did change was I put the square brackets on it. And what ends up happening then within the tooling of Visual Studio, if you go and say, oh, let me go ahead and manage my NuGet packages. If you look here, you know the update. I know there's a newer version of MediatR, but it's not showing up in the update list. So it looks and goes, oh, you specifically said you wanted this 12.4. All right, I'm not going to bother telling you there's anything to update. So it's hidden away. You can't see it on the update. If you view it under your install, it'll even say, which is, I don't like that it does this, but it says that the latest stable version is installed. That is not the latest stable version. There is a new stable version, but because of just the way that they built this particular tooling, that's what it shows.
I'm curious about, in this situation, do you think it still offers you update if transitive dependence is prevented? Is it that smart, or it could run into conflict later?
It will throw conflicts if for some reason you need a newer version and it can't, because it's being told to lock down, it will.
So they're not resolved yet when it offers you update, right? You may run into conflicts later.
Yeah. This is purely just how the tooling portrays it to you. So this is the way so that it's a quick change, put your little square brackets on the thing, and then anyone that's in messing around, updating NuGet package and stuff, it prevents them from accidentally seeing and updating it, so that you don't accidentally pull down the new version that has a license change on it, and then you're legally binding that you've implemented the new version. So this is the quick and dirty. Just all right, Visual Studio, leave me alone. Don't bug me about it.
No,
Chill.
That's very useful in many situations. Also, vulnerabilities. Right?
Oh. Look at that. I hate when it doesn't start over where I want it to be. All right, where were we at? Demo. Cool. All right. So obviously the pros on a situation like this is you got no immediate cost you have to deal with. You just keep using the free version. I say zero code change. Okay, it's one line. You got to go into your CS project. You got to put two little brackets on. So okay, it's not zero. It's one line of code change, but minimal dev effort. At least that way you're not going to accidentally start using a different license version. Again, that's your quick short-term path. You want to just prevent yourself from getting into a legal situation. This is how you take care of it. That being said, let's be honest. This is not a long-term fix. You're now missing out on all your bug fixes, security patches, its potential. You've though in most cases all these licensing changes have always been a new version. It's just because that's how the licensing works. With if you're looking at any of the GPL or the MIT or any of those, they can't retroactively change the license. It has to be the next version they change the license. So in most cases, they wanted to do a big version rev number. So we'll go from version 12 to version 13. Version 13 is the new license, paid. They might still provide free security patches for the next couple of years, at least on the free version, just because they want to be good stewards of the environment. You do that, you're now locked out of getting those. So that's a risk you have to worry about. Similarly, compatibility risks. It's pretty rare. I think .NET's kind of stabilized, at least the framework, pretty heavily at this point. But you're now pinned to a particular library that's been compiled against a particular version of the framework and a particular version of the C# language. What happens in 2 years when your project's upgraded to .NET 8, .NET 9, .NET 55, and you're still using this library that's built against whatever version Jimmy last made the compile on. It's probably 7 or something like that. 7 or 8, I'm guessing he's probably compiled it against. All of a sudden, you do an upgrade and boom, all your code blows up and fails because this package isn't compatible anymore.
I mean, this cost could be partially mitigated if you are willing to build, right? If you freeze the source rather than.
Well, we'll get to that. You're jumping my gun, man. I got you. Spoilers. And obviously, the growing tech debt. You're just postponing the inevitable decision here. I mean, so it's just going to make it messier for you later. So again, this is just. I like to just specify. This is stopgap. This is not like we're done, close ticket, no longer have to worry about it, and move on with your life. This is let's put a ticket in that says in 6 months we need to figure out what the heck we're doing with this library because otherwise we're going to run into problems. So option 3, forking the library. Legally, you're allowed to copy and claim it as code as your own. So that's an opportunity. We can clone it and move on and take it as our own. So how would you do this? When I talk about forking the library, I'm focusing on enterprise world. So I kind of see 2 options. You're not going to just fork it at GitHub and run your own public version. That's a whole different situation. There are people who are doing that. There's already been like 10 different people that claim they are going to be the replacement for the open source version of MediatR. We'll see how many of them are willing to put up with maintaining that code base in a year and how many of them all disappear off the face of the earth. But for enterprises, I see sort of 2 options on how you could handle basically taking control of this code. If you're a larger enterprise, hopefully you're setting up a private NuGet server, or I don't know. I think some Azure DevOps actually calls it like a a feed or something. Yeah, it's got a different term than whatever it is. Yeah, there's different terms and terminology, but the concept of a private place where you have code that you can reference via NuGet to pull down so you can have your own compiled package stored in your own private little world. Excuse me. So that's what I'm talking about. Grab a copy of the code, set up your own build process, build it, release your own version, pop it in your private repo, and then you just change the reference from NuGet.org to however the feed comes from that. And then you can keep plugging away for the rest of your life. And then if you need to do bug fixes, things like that, you can take care of it yourself. The other option, if you're a smaller operation or you don't have the capabilities of doing a private NuGet server, obviously you can just grab the code, throw it into your project, and then all you have to do is instead of referencing the NuGet package, you just change it to project references. So there's going to be a MediatR library that's just going to exist within your code base now, and you're just going to reference that. So every time you build, it's going to build all of MediatR and include it in your project. It's not the best way, but you can do that. So again, if hopefully you're operating in a large and complex environment, you guys got some kind of place where you can do a proper build NuGet package, reference it. Because if you had like 20 different applications and every single one of them had a separate copy of MediatR, that's kind of a pain to maintain. So, but again, it's an option. So, you're pros. Hey, no license fees, guys. Yay, it's ours. Nice thing is, it's now open to customization. It's your code. You can modify it to suit your needs. So, maybe there's something you wish they had always added to the library, but they never did. And your bosses never were going to give you authority to submit code to the open source project to do it. You can now start shaping it into the tool that you want. Your direction, your timing, your changes. Woohoo! Those are some pretty awesome things you can do. Cons, obviously, now you got a maintenance burden. Your team now owns all the bug fixes, updates. It's all your responsibility now. You run in the risk, divergence risk, depending on if they keep that open source version running for security patches for a while or something like that. You're going to risk drifting out of sync with them, which means fragility of the code. And obviously the big thing is the time sink. You're adding long-term overhead without direct business value. At the end of the day, your goal is supposed to be write the minimum amount of code that provides the most value for the business. If you're not doing that, you're not doing your job right as a developer. And that should be fundamental knowledge that everyone that writes software should know, is write the minimum amount of code to provide the most value. If you're maintaining a third-party library's code, all of a sudden, well, that's not providing any value to the business. But now it's something you have to maintain and operate. Not so wonderful. Nope. Okay. I'll check. Make sure no one's saying I'm talking too quiet or anything. So, option 4. This is sort of one of the realistic options, assuming you're not going to pay, is finding a suitable replacement. That's most cases, the libraries, the tools, they're not the only one in town. If it's something that exists, someone's probably made a copy of it, especially if it's popular. Someone always wants to copy the popular things. Even before MediatR decided to go commercial, if you wanted to look at how many different libraries were out there where they're doing MediatR style functionality, there's at least a dozen within NuGet if you just search for the word MediatR that show up in some shape or form. Now, a lot of them got 100 downloads and no one's actually using them, but that's just because one became very popular and everyone decided to use that one and kind of standardize on that. Doesn't mean some of those aren't about to get real popular here in the next couple of months as people start researching. So let's go out. Let's go look. How are we going to find these? This should be pretty obvious, but social media is the big place. Anytime anything crazy happens like this, Twitter, Discord, all the chat, it's all everyone's talking about. Oh my gosh, can you believe what's just happened? And then everyone's going to be like, yeah, I'm switching to this other one because it's better. Specifically, the one I'm going to show one example of a different one to replace. Actually caught it on the mediators GitHub issues. When people started complaining about it, they were making issues up in GitHub, and this one was listed repeatedly. I saw it mentioned multiple times over and over again. Just switch to this one. It's better anyways for XY reason, which is why we switched to it years ago. So I'm like, all right, I'll take a look at it and see what's so great about this one. Specifically Reddit. Again, this one is just, again, because of this hot topic issue. I think there were a dozen mediator discussions within the last month that have popped up on either r/.net or r/C#. To the point where every time a new one popped up, people would be like, all right, we've already talked about this enough. Move on. And obviously, just Google it. Hey, replacement option for mediator. There's going to be a blog post. You'll find a YouTube video. You'll find something. So it's not that hard. But I feel like I have to tell people how to do that. Otherwise, they're going to be like, I don't know what to find. So the one I wanted to show is, ironically, what do you know, called MediatR with an OR. It's created by this nice guy, Martin. I'm going to kill his last name. Othamar, something like that. I'm terrible at names. I hate me. I'm sorry, dude. But one of the interesting things and why this one popped up a lot, and one of the reasons it was brought up a lot, which was that it uses source generators. Now, if you haven't heard of source generators, this is something that came along in .NET 5, is that you write code that is not code that's going to be compiled and put into your project. You write code that is going to be compiled and then run by the build, MS Build, to generate dynamic code, which will then be compiled and included in your project. It's basically an abstraction. It's somewhere where you can write code that is going to write different code for your functionality. It's a little mind-blowing there, We're getting a little meta. I'm writing code that writes code. This is crazy.
I was actually going to suggest one of the lightning talks about source generators.
There you go. Someone do a talk on source generators. I think you volunteered.
That's what I heard.
Exactly. I think you just volunteered yourself. But specifically, because everyone was saying this one uses source generators, which is fast. And this gets into the whole, if you cared to look at MediatR and how it's actually implemented, under the hood, the biggest piece of tooling that it uses is reflection, which is slow and cumbersome, and it's at runtime. So when you talk to MediatR and say, I want you to do the functionality that MediatR does, it does a bunch of reflections, scans through namespaces, looks for classes that match certain whatevers, finds them, instantiates the object.
It's one time, right? It's an instantiation.
Partially. It's a little weird on how it. If you look at earlier versions, he changed on some of it, but in general, so one of the points is like your startup time. If you do a whole lot of work with a mediator, you start having a lot of these handlers that the mediator works with, your startup times get to be an issue, especially when you start to look at like serverless code, so like Azure functions and things like that. People start focusing on, what's that cold start? How quickly can my app respond to it? So that's one of the things. This uses source generators. It's all compiled code. There's no reflection. There's no dynamic at runtime. So it's a very popular replacement option that's coming up. And again, it's fast. Here's some code comparisons between MediatR and his implementation. MediatR.
So does it have a feature pair?
It's pretty close. There's a few differences, but it's not a drop-in replacement, but it's as close as you're going to get, because one of the focuses was when he was building, it was like, I just want to make it but faster and better. And I'm pretty sure this developer just wanted to create it and try out source generators. Is the original reason. And so they went ahead and did it. So, depending on, you look at something that's like cold starts, it's like 4 times faster initial boots, cold starts. The actual media requesting, depending on how you use it, it can be up to like 20 times faster, which is just like, wow, that's again, we're talking at nanoseconds, which doesn't sound crazy, but when you start talking about scale and responsiveness, I mean, something that's 20 times faster, even when you're talking blink of an eye, that's pretty impressive. One of the things it didn't also focuses on, like memory allocation. MediatR is a little fat, it can get a little fat on how its memory allocation works. This, because it's all like flat compiled code, sort of, it's not exactly, but kind of at the end of the day, it basically makes like a giant switch statement from what I understand. And sort of like, oh, if you make this request, then switch goes to run, and there's like no allocation, no some of that. So again, let's do a nice demo and show it off here. Woo! Like when that switches. So this is the, let me scale back here. Boop. So this is like the bare minimum. I just made this cool little, ping and a ping handler. And if you look at MediatR, the MediatR we're trying to replace versus MediatR, the new project. This is going to kill me.
Are the namespaces the same or?
No, luckily it uses MediatR. So yeah, you could drop both of them in, and then you could slowly do a conversion across probably. But it basically just, it's your standard service collection setup. You can give it optional namespaces for where to scan or leave it null, and basically tell it just scan everywhere. And then it goes. So what you'll find is the first time you run it,
would be cool if it was built against the same interface as the old one. That could save you.
Like I say, they're pretty similar to the point where there's not much that has to be changed. So there it goes. It called in this case, I made once I got my MediatR service, it calls MediatR.send. It passes in an iRequest. And so these interfaces are the same. You have an iRequest of a type, and then you have an iRequest handler that you create, and it creates a handle. The difference is that the return type, they do this like value task object versus just a straight task that MediatR does. So that's one of the things. You have to like do a mass replace for like this value task versus task, but one quick mass replace in your project, boop, update everything. But fundamentally, it's the same concept. It has a handler with an iRequest handler. But like I said, once it's all set up and you run it the first time, then all of a sudden you find this generated folder shows up. And you're like, where'd that come from? I didn't make that. And let's scroll it over a little bit. Yeah. And it's kind of nested down here, which is kind of slightly weird, but all of a sudden, this is the generated code. So this is at build time. It scanned your code, found your handlers and your requests, and this is all, like it says, generated by the MediatR source generator. Don't modify this by hand. You'll regret even trying to. There's a lot of code and so it's a little hard to kind of read through, but it generated a lot of code.
That's the beauty of source generators.
Yep.
You can write it not for humans.
Exactly, and that's the thing. This is not exactly for human consumption. But this is going to provide the functionality you need, so that back in your program, all you have to say is, give me a MediatR and MediatR.send, and it all works. So that's pretty sweet. So I was like, hey, cool.
Does that generated source become part of your DLL?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's the thing, is that from a source generator's perspective, in your repository you have that code, but then every time you do a build, you have this generated code. And you should set your ignore to ignore pulling that down. I mean, you can, there's no harm in it, but every time a build happens, it's going to get replaced anyway, so it's sort of pointless to store a copy of that.
I think that's the whole point, was that it could build.
But And then it puts it in there specifically because if you wanted to do something like, oh, let me click on that send function and see where it goes. Oh, dang it. I don't want that.
Control F12.
Yeah, I know. I pressed the wrong button. Try this again. F12. There we go. Should go to the... try to find it. It's gonna... There it goes. It's now dropped into that mediator.g.cs, which it even specifies that it's generated code, which is kind of cool. For some reason, it doesn't connect to the one over here, but this is the send function that got generated. And you can see it's a switch statement. Case, the ping request. Well, there's some code here that basically gets it all set up and builds it and runs it, and hey, neato. So, source generators, they're awesome, they're fast, they're cool, and this library is kind of handy. No, there we go. For that. So the pros on this one. One of the kind of neat things about this is basically compiler time safety. Anyone that works with MediatR specifically often run into the problem where if you don't register your handlers correctly or you don't do something exactly correct, you can actually, the code will compile and it will run. And then when you make that request for MediatR to like actually figure out what to do, then it throws a big fit and goes, well, I don't know what to do. And your app crashes and burns. Because of the way this compiles and because it does this, you'll actually, if you don't do it exactly right, it's a build failure, not a runtime failure, which is kind of nice. You don't accidentally get that stuff pushed out into prod and then you go, oh, it broke. Yeah, better performance. There's no, because it doesn't do runtime discovery using reflection, it's peppy. And it's leveraging modern C# standards. One of the reasons why source generators have kind of come along is the concept of like, is because too many things rely on reflection, and reflection is slow, it's bulky. It's not really, I mean, it works, but why do you have to write code that sits there and dynamically on the fly scans for code to do things? You know what you need, but it's just there's no other way to do it until now. Finally, with source generators, we can start to move to a compile time functionality. I don't think reflection is ever going to get removed. Obviously, it's a very useful tool in a lot of different cases, but that's one of the reasons source generators came along. So this is sort of that aligning with what's modern, what's hip, what's cool, and what's the future. Cons specifically with this library, there's new tooling complexity. Your build setup's a little different. Diagnostics are a little different. Again, this one, a lot of people are saying this is a great tool, but you look at it, he hasn't done a new release of it in about 1.5 years. Hasn't had a need to because everyone's been happy with it. But if you look at the issues, his issues are starting to pile up as people are looking to switch and going, it doesn't do this. Can you make it do this? MediatR has this function. Yours doesn't do this. Or MediatR works this way, which is slightly different than yours. Could you change it so that it works that way? And so we'll have to see how this developer, the other, and a few other people that help him work on this project are willing to put the effort into adding the functionality to take advantage of this, or are they going to falter and not provide the ability to make the transition? So it's a little less mature. Documentation could use a little help, things like that. Again, I'm debatable on this one, but some people were saying it's harder to debug with the generated code. They don't like the fact that the code's generated on the fly, so they're like, I can't debug it or I can't look through it until it's generated. But you can, because it shows it, and then you can, once it's done it once, you can step through it and you can look. But again, because it's generated code, you don't have the control over the code. So I think people don't like that. Lights went off. Anyways. The other option is write your own replacement. I mean, hey, you always said you could build it better yourself. So let's just go ahead and do it. And luckily we can get some help. I tried this the other night just for, giggles. Hey, ChatGPT,
Oh, no.
I need to replace MediatR. Can you give me the minimum code needed to re-implement the basic functionality of the iSender send functionality without the need for any external libraries? And it sat there and thought for a while, and it thought for a while. I was like, oh, I'm going to actually stump this one for a second. Like, holy crap. And then also went, here you go. Here's the minimum code needed to implement a basic version of the iSender send functionality for Mediator using only .NET-based class libraries. I was like, you got to be flipping kidding me. This is crazy. And it's not that much code. I'm not joking. So let's check this out. Now, I will throw a caveat out here. This is not a feature matching version. You're going to have to go toe-to-toe with ChatGPT about 20 more times telling it the stuff it's not doing right or it's missing a piece of functionality. But again, I told it, give me the bare minimum code to basically implement a mediator pattern library. I've got my interface for iRequest. And it gave me all this. It gave me the interface for the iRequest handler. It gave me an interface for the iSender with the send function. And then it created a simple mediator that has an iSender. And that is the entire code. I'm not...
Okay, so my experience is, how well does it work? Do you bug it at all?
From a functional standpoint, it functions the way the mediator pattern is supposed to work. From functionality of what mediator the library can do, this is missing about 100 important features.
Well, the bare minimum.
Yeah, this is.
My question is, how much debugging time?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is literally me just saying, give me it to me, and I copy and paste and dropped it in and ran it to see if it worked, and it works.
Yeah, so it's 0.
Yeah, so it's.
I asked ChatGPT the other day, and I'm still fixing it. So
That's
I
it.
thought it saved me half a day.
Boop.
It's taking me half a day to fix it.
Well, I broke something now when I copied and pasted this, but then I do. I ran it yesterday and it worked fine when I was testing it. All right.
It works on my machine.
It is actually, this is my fault. I was working on an actual different machine. I was working on my other computer. And then I just went and copy and pasted this, but I did have to tweak something. I forgot to tweak something. All right. It's pointless to run it anyways, but this is like the bare minimum code. You could do it. Hey, what do you know? But it's just funny, like, you look at Mediator, it's this big library with a ton of people developing on it, and it's generated 42 lines of code to implement a very simplified version of what it does.
I'm surprised they had to call get that given it was generic to begin with, right?
That's, like I said,
Anyway,
we don't need to worry too much.
yeah.
We'll skip the demo. Obviously, we'll run through these really quick. Your pros, hey, what do you know? It's tailored to your needs. It only implements the feature exactly that you use. And that's one of the things. Mediator does a lot of stuff that you might not have any need for. So you could basically provide a simplified version that does just what you need. No external dependencies now, especially when it's 40-ish lines of code. That's about as lean and performant as you're going to get. Stripped down bare. Realistically, there's no community support. It's your own application now from scratch. Do you really want to trust ChatGPT to be giving you fundamental code that ties together your entire application? Come on now. Hidden edge cases. Maybe it's not so performant. Again, smart people built and maintained Mediator for years. Can you really do it better?
It'd be kind of fun.
I mean, it'd be a fun challenge to go ahead and do.
You should.
I fully encourage people to go ahead and try it. Try doing a clean room implementation. Take it, remove Mediator, NuGet package if you happen to be using it on your project, and try to do a clean room implementation to make it refunctional. Realistically, please, for the love of God, don't use this option. This is more a joke than anything, just because everyone's going to say that. Everyone is always going to say, we'll just build it ourselves. Screw it. Why pay for it? We'll build it ourselves. There's reasons why you didn't build it for yourself in the first place. Because you realize someone's probably smarter and they knew how to do it better than you. You really think now just because they want to charge for it, you can do it just as good? Come on. Let's not, stroke our egos that much. So I had to do a little, weighing the options, look here. Just sort of a breakdown of your cost, complexity, effort, Pain, obviously, it's got the highest cost. The complexity effort's low because you don't have to do anything. Pinning / freezing, it's all low. There's no effort involved in it. If I was to add another row, the row would be, is this going to screw you over later in life? And that would be very high. Forking it, cost, hey, low, but your complexity and your efforts are high because now you're setting up build pipelines to build NuGet packages on private repo. You're maintaining an entire new code base that you've never had to maintain before. I mean, that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of complexity. Your replacement, assuming you're looking for a free version and not a different paid version, your cost is obviously low. Complexity and efforts, it could be low if you're lucky enough to find a drop-in replacement option. It could be high if it's one that is going to require a bunch of fundamental changing because they want to do it still does the same thing, but they want to do it slightly differently, and then you have to modify. And again, something like MediatR, the project I'm on, I have no idea at this point. I would have to look, but I bet we have 200 or 300 handlers to do all the functionality that we need to do. If we had to go into each individual one of those, and because just the signature of the handle function got changed, if we're lucky, it's a quick, change task to value task, mass update, bada bing, bada boom, we're out of the door. But if it's something that's a little more complicated that we have to change, well, now I've got 300 different classes I've got to go through, each and every one, change it. Then we got to do regression testing to make sure it all works right. So there's, it's not a perfect, so that's the thing. It's low to high. Build your own. Well, cost low, complexity effort, it's high. It's so high, don't do it.
That sounds like you're making case there's a need for a migration tool.
That would be nice. If you could find a nice tool that could help me do those type of things.
But you find one and it goes commercial.
Yeah, and then they'll go commercial and charge you. So that's sort of the breakdown of our 5. There's probably other options. If we sat here and we could debate for hours what other options there are to do things, but this was my take on this is what's going to happen in the office. Someone's going to come and go, hey guys, did you just hear? MediatR's going commercial. Ah, man, what do we got to do now? This is going to be the 5 discussion topics that are going to be batted around for the next week on what do we do. I can't give you the answer. Let me switch that. There you go. So we're sort of there. Questions, answers. Ask me anything. Don't ask me which option to use. That at the end of the day, that's a discussion that is going to have to happen within your enterprise with your bosses. I'm not here to tell you what the right answer is, but I want to help have that discussion and think about those. It's something that because it's happening more and more. I feel like it's something that we need to have this discussion, which is why I made this presentation, to kind of get people thinking about those things. Because the gut reaction is always going to be, fine, we'll replace it. Because every one of those, fluent assertion, MediatR, everyone always says, just switch to this one, it's better. Anyways, and if they're going to charge for it, screw them. But is that really the correct answer? Maybe, and this gets into sort of, the sitting around the water cooler or drinking some beers at the bar, discussion in deeper technical details. But, if you're a big company that charges a bunch of money for your product and you use this code to run your operations, I mean, it's kind of fair for them to ask to be paid for their work too. So, don't discount making the pay, but that's also a hard pull sometimes for when you gotta talk to stingy bosses.
So this is kind of the classic argument for the design patterns, is to interface away and write adapters for any external library that you want to do to try to make some of these transitions easier if you have to. And
Yep.
Hopefully some people will start learning those lessons a little bit more than I think a lot of people do.
That is, that's one of those debates every time people always say, like, why does everyone do repositories? Why don't you just use Entity Framework directly from within your code? Why does everyone create a iRepository wrapper that just makes a bunch of EF calls? And everyone always says, well, what if I need to change my database? And everyone goes, you never are gonna do that. Well, yes, it happens occasionally. It does happen to where you change to a NoSQL system or a document DB, and you have to pull out all that EF code. But that's always that great debate between. So this is the case where now some of these libraries are not designed in a way that you can wrap them with some kind of abstraction layer or thing like that, just because of the way they function, in which case there's no good way. But that is some of like Image Sharp, that would be a great one that you should probably have made sure to wrap all that in some kind of generic image helper library wrapper, so that when they decided to come demand and cache, all of a sudden you could find a different library to drop in and just rewire up the same calls. That's where it comes into those kind of situations.
And if I could, I was just going if I could critique your presentation a little bit, your pros and cons for the replacement were specifically for replacing MediatR with MediatR.
Yeah.
And so you might want to, if you revise this, take a step back and say, what are the pros and cons of replacing any dependency rather than just this one specific?
Yeah, it's good. Good call.
Some libraries just kind of like what sounds like Meteor is kind of one of those things that just kind of sits in the core. It kind of sits in the core.
It's hard to abstract around that, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Mediator, that's what I say. Like Mediator is one of those ones. Mass Transit, that's another one.
Mm-hmm.
That is so fundamentally core to how you build the entire code base around it.
It's like Spring in Java.
Yeah, Spring. Yeah, it's hard to hide. There's no way to hide Mediator. You can't really pull that off. Same way with like Mass Transit. You can't hide that. It's a difficult thing. So that's my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay. Speech. I just spoke. Jeez. What's up with this? Hell, oh, you crowd. All right, so thank you anyways. Let's go ahead and kill the see y'all next month, everyone. And